What was the best karma as a bee moment you have witnessed? I was in daycare as a child. I had very long hair that my dad always put into a ponytail. There was a girl that would pull my ponytail all the time. We were doing a musical chairs thing at the end of the day while parents were picking us up. The girl was behind me and kept yanking my ponytail. I kept telling her to stop. The teacher didn't see anything, so I can't do anything about it. There were a bunch of parents waiting for us to finish our game. My mom included, and she kept doing it and the teacher didn't see it, so I turned around and punched her as hard as I could. She stumbled into the cubbies where we kept our coats. The teacher tried to chastise me and my mom was like, nope, I didn't see anything. Didn't even get in trouble. I'm from San Diego and during the summer, you have to claim bonfire pits on the beach really in the morning if you want it for that night. So my friends and I got to the beach at 8 AM and stayed there so we can get a bonfire going into the night. Just before sundown, this one couple asked if they could share the bonfire with us, and since our group wasn't too big, we decided to share it with them. However, that couple proceeded to bring a group of like 15 others and they literally surrounded the pit and pushed us out. We were peed, but we were so tired from being at the beach all day, so we decided to head out. Little did we know what that night had an extreme high tide warning, and when we moved all of our stuff over the wall that divided the beach walk with the beach, a huge wave came in and washed out that whole group surrounded by our bonfire. The wave flipped over their table of food, took a handful of sandals back into the ocean, and destroyed all their stuff. The best part was this one girl was trying to jump the wall to save herself, but she didn't jump high enough and ended up falling right back into the waters. Karma's a bee. Neptune decided to take revenge on your behalf. I was running laps on a grass field in the military when I was about to lap a guy who'd always lap the crap out of me. So as I passed him I yelled gotcha, B, and immediately stepped in a hole in the ground and twisted my ankle. Despite the pain of jacking my ankle up, I thought the karmic payout was hilariously timed. That's hilarious. You gave that guy a good story to tell too. My old manager was a monster, belittled people, made a hostile environment, denied anything that would make co-workers happy while giving himself every comfort, even denied me a half day to go to my mother's funeral, adding, would it be a big deal if you couldn't go? He finally stepped on his dong after he wrote up a fictitious counseling statement about someone and the entire office revolted. The manager wasn't fired like we wanted, but he was relieved. So in comes the new manager, very well regarded, 20-year Air Force veteran, retired at E9, humble guy who knew how to handle people. We have our first awkward team meeting, old manager bitterly in attendance. As the new manager is giving his nice to meet you speech, he sees the douchebag glaring around the table trying to intimidate people. He stops talking, pauses for a few seconds, and then says, you know, when I was in the Air Force I learned that if you take care of your people, they'll take care of you. He then stared directly at the old manager and said, and if you don't take care of your people, they'll take care of you. Sitting on a highway late at night because of a bad car accident. The highway was packed and barely moving. One guy thinks he's smarter than everyone else and tries to drive on the shoulder. He makes it a good little ways before running into an on-ramp, also packed with cars. He had nowhere to go, and no one let him in. He was stuck between cars in the rightmost lane and cars from the on-ramp. Everyone stuck bumper to bumper and flowed around him. I went from watching him pass me and almost getting out of my view to passing him and losing sight of him in my rear view. I love highway justice. My husband and I call people like that the dong of the mile, because there's always one. When I was a kid, we visited Montreal. I had gotten a hockey puck as a souvenir. While we were in our hotel, my sister decided to mess with me by hiding it. I got mad and yelled in my high-pitched voice, give me back my hockey puck, before smacking her in the head with a pillow. Guess where she had hidden it? As a parent, I don't think I could even get mad for that. Driving to Chicago and a crazy guy is road raging, swerving erratically while yelling about shooting us. He zooms off. 5 or so miles later we see his van upside down in the ditch. He's standing on the shoulder talking to a cop. Shoulder pulled over and said, hey, about you threatening to shoot me back there. Sorry, but you were going so fast I couldn't keep up. But hey, you're welcome to give it a shot now. I got rear-ended in a turn lane by a girl texting. She was doing 45 miles per hour and I was stopped. No major injuries. I went to her court date hoping she got a big fine or something. She got a $50 ticket. I was a little bit upset. As I was sitting at the stoplight to pull out of the court, I watched her run a red light and bone a cop. I don't normally laugh at other people's misfortune. However, I laughed my butt off at that one. When I was driving my Jeep very carefully in a snowstorm and someone in a Mustang passed me in an unsafe manner, he almost lost control of his car, which would have caused an accident that included me. Picture someone dangerously fishtailing right in front of you with an 18-wheeler coming at you in the other lane. Saw him in the ditch about 5 minutes later. Idiot. I have had that exact thing happen before. There is nothing better than driving past them stuck in the ditch and just laughing at them. On my drive back from school, I witnessed a car run a red light in front of a cop. The car was subsequently pulled over. I pointed laughing and then immediately smashed into the car in front of me. I work in an and once a girl got brought in by ambulance after being assaulted. She was walking down the street when some guy tackled her to the ground and tried to drag her down an alley. A good Samaritan managed to chase him off and call the cops. Like 20 minutes later, they brought in a guy in full cardiac arrest. Turns out the police found the attacker and chased him several blocks when he collapsed and his heart gave out. He was dead on arrival and the victim ID'd him right in the air. I was kicking a customer out for being racist and cursing at one of my employees. He yelled offensive stuff all and then he tried to slam the door on his way out, but it had one of those things on it that makes the door close slowly. He pushed it hard. It didn't budge and he slipped and fell on the floor. We had a good laugh. When my ex-husband, who stole $4,000 from me to go visit his mistress in another country, called me to beg for money, actually my credit card number, as if, because his lights got cut off. I can see you sitting there grinning ear to ear drinking a glass of wine just flipping the lights on and off. The other day I was taking my dog for a walk around the neighborhood. She squatted down to take a crap and I reached for my doggy bags only to realize I was fresh out. So I peeked around making sure nobody was looking, and I just left it. 10 minutes later I'm walking across the road and I cut through a thin grass median in the center and what do you know? I step in dog crap. I wasn't even mad. I knew I deserved it. When I was in first grade, my class had recess and this bully pushed me to the ground. I fell and was about to go off on the kid when this 4th grader came over, lifted the kid up and took the kid over to the principal. Karma's the crap. I was at a party one time, and this one girl couldn't stop talking crap about this other girl that was coming to the party. The other girl shows up and this dude picked her up and hugged her and spun her around in a way where her foot kicked the girl that was talking crap right in the head face while she was sitting on the couch. Her beer spilled all over her and she caught a black eye. Contagious black eyes are the worst. Happened to me at work. M-Head was trying to pay with like 1,000 coins for a $5 scratch off. She tried to say she was only 10 cents short, ended up being over $1 short, then complained and said any decent person would have spotted her the money. Pretty much told her she could go down the street and try there if she'd like. She pulled out a 20 and bought 2. As she walked out the store she said karma's a bee. When she gets to her car a cop pulls up behind blocking her in. They proceed to search the car then arrest her and her boyfriend. It was hilarious. Frick her. A classmate in school broke one of his legs and was using crutches. He was about to go down the stairs and another kid kicked one of his crutches down the stairs. I walked down there and got his crutch for him, and while walking back up, the kid who kicked the crutches came tumbling down and I moved out of the way. The kid broke his arm. Last Saturday I was on a crowded Nick subway at 2 AM. 2 drunk dudes, young 20s, lighting a joint and walking around flaunting it. One literally came up to me, "You think a pothead ain't gonna smoke a joint?" whatever that means. The whole train kept ignoring them, and they kept parading around being a bunch of morons. They spotted 2 taller, athletic looking dudes and started making fun of them for looking like cops. It was the line "Which one of you is the sergeant?" that finally put the athletic guys over the edge. They looked at each other, smiled, reached into their pocket and pulled out their badges. "Okay boys, empty your pockets." The subway blew up in laughter. They would have gotten away with everything if they just didn't go bother the 2 plainclothes police officers. Score 1 for the good guys. And then I went home and smoked a joint in my living room. I worked as a bartender at a bowling alley. For some reason one of the other bartenders hated me. She was constantly poaching people on my side. Horse show shaped bar, so we each got a side. We split tips and whenever it was her turn to count them down I know she wasn't splitting them properly. Tried to get the scheduling manager to put her on my days, etc. One of my regulars even said she caught her pocketing tips and not putting them in our communal bucket while I was working with her. Well, tournament season started, which everyone dreaded looked forward to. Dreaded because the shifts were twice or 3 times as long as normal and there was a constant rush of people at the bar. Looked forward to because shifts were 2 or 3 times as long as normal and there was a constant rush of people at the bar. So we'd make as much in a day as we did in a week. Well, the first tournament was teams that she considered hers. They bowled on her side on days she worked, so she knew them well and was looking forward to their tournament tips. She came in, saw that I was scheduled to bartend that day, and flipped out. She started ranting to the manager, who happened to be the scheduling manager, and the owner of the place happened to be standing there. The owner pretty much said I was one of the better bartenders so I was getting put on the tournaments, and if she didn't like it she could just leave. My co-worker left, and then I got to work her normal shifts as well. Oof, I hope you got someone to join you on the bar though. Be or not that'd be heck with one person. When I was a kid I threw a basketball into a puddle in front of a friend of mine, splashing him. I'm walking backwards, pointing and laughing. I then turn around right into a pole and knock myself out. I was working in a pub in Liverpool and had just arrived, about 10 AM, to start my shift. I knocked on the door and waited for someone to let me in. I became aware of some voices shouting and turned around to see 2 guys, shirts off, swaggering towards me talking in a language I didn't understand. They came right up to me and what little English they did speak came out. They called me a fricking W and a fricking B etc. Nasty stuff and I was really quite scared. I was knocking on the door really hard at this point but after insulting me and laughing they walked off towards a busy road. I watched as they walked out into the traffic waving their arms at the cars to stop for them then giving the drivers the finger. Suddenly one of the cars stopped and 4 big guys got out. One of the nasty dudes ran off but the big man got caught and shoved hard against the car a couple of times clearly hurting his head and elbow. Then one of the car guys made out that he was going to punch him, big time, drawing his fist far back. The little crap just covered his face and screamed. They didn't get hit but the car guys and a lot of passers-by burst out laughing. They let him go and he ran away. That felt good. My dad kicked our dog because it was standing in front of the fridge and he wanted a beer. But as soon as he opened the fridge the shelf that was holding the beer fell off and every single can busted open. Woman on a cell phone runs me off the road. Flips me off for laying on the horn. The road dead ends a mile up the road. She was going right and I was a ways back going left. A van was in front of her at the red light and she just plows into the back of it. I slow down as I passed with the window down. Running me off the road wasn't enough to get your attention. Ha, she flips out. I laugh and drive off into the sunset. My brother was making fun of an old man slowly shuffling across a parking lot. Look at Speedy Gonzales or something and 2 seconds after my brother, bashes his foot on the cement parking barrier. He limped back to the car as I laughed hysterically. Gimpy Gonzales. Guy who used to make fun of me in middle school turned into the kid all the teachers made jokes about. Seeing that butthole who continues to swerve in and out of traffic, speed like no other, and cut you and others off multiple times get pulled over. I work for a contracted unloading service in a warehouse. One of the guys on my crew is an absolute little bee sometimes. Complains about his work. Tries to leave early every day. Bums cigarettes off everyone without ever bringing his own pack, etc. He even owes some of my other co-workers money, I believe. But I digress. On Thursday, he lost his crap over a produce load and threw a temper tantrum, kicking boxes, tearing down tall pallets of product, and causing a lot of damage. Right as the site manager walked by his trailer door, got suspended without pay and was told he is on his last chance with the company. Now it's only a matter of time before he gets fired. Sweet, sweet karma. I was working at a mental health facility for the elderly as a nurse. Worked there for over a year with a perfect work record. I worked for the same company at another elderly facility also for the same amount of time with a perfect work record. My co-worker found out I have PTSD and decided to tell my boss at the psych facility that I have PTSD, and the two together plotted to have me committed. One day in October 2012 they launched their attack. I was working a 7 AM to 3 PM shift and doing very well for 2 hours when my boss called me into her office to congratulate me on 1 year service. When we were in her office alone, she started grilling me about my mental health and how it plays out at home. The next thing I know, she's forcing me to call my co-worker who is off duty and making me go with her to the psych emergency because I have PTSD. The entire meeting was designed to stress me out and cause me to be triggered enough to behave poorly or crazy somehow to rationalize the next step, which was cart me off to emergency, and when they see me they will instantly know I belong locked away in a padded room. They didn't though. The hospital said I was fine, just stressed out about being forced to go to the hospital like a crazy person for no reason other than admitting I had PTSD. After the hospital let me go, my boss put me on extended medical leave without telling me and ignored all my calls for 2 weeks. Wrote letters lying about me to her bosses and the HR department. I filed a union grievance and a complaint with a third-party whistleblower company for my company's head office to hear about. My boss lied about me to everyone. She said I told her I had a murderer in my head, that I was standing in front of mirrors with knives wanting to cut flesh. They believed her, so they shut down my complaints. I took it to the Human Rights Tribunal, self-represented against the largest long-term care provider in North America, and I freaking won. Took 3 long years from incidents to end of court. It was the hardest thing I have ever done. My employer's health declined considerably by the time trial happened. She lost her job, she had to move to the mainland, and there is a forever public record about what she did. The co-worker who helped my boss is in the permanent record, and the employees of the job site were ordered to learn of what she and our boss had done to me and the outcome. She will never be comfortable at that job site again, and who what she is known to all. I got the highest amount awarded for damages to dignity and self. I created a precedent for other PTSD persons with clean work history who do a good job on the clock but have very real struggles with PTSD symptoms at home. No karma could possibly taste better than 40k and a clear reputation. Whoa, she is just evil. I'm so glad you got through the court case and she got what was coming to her. Retail service workers of Reddit. What's the best instant karma you've seen happen to a rude customer? I work at an auto parts store. This one guy stole some $60 headlights and literally sprinted out the door. We went to look outside to try and get his license plate, just in time to see him speed off, hit a curb, and blow out his tire. Called the cops and the dumbass got arrested and had to have his car towed. I was really hoping you were going to look out the window and see him calmly changing them in the parking lot. Working the window at McDonald's late night. Guy orders whatever and pulls up to the window. I'm cooking and handling the window, so I wasn't there when the customer pulled up. When I walked up to the window, I didn't see the sucker with trash in his lap. I open the window to take his card cash and he throws a bag of trash at me. I take a step back, bothered that I just got trash thrown at me, and I watch his car speed off. I'm peed, but there's nothing I can do. A couple seconds later I hear a small bang of metal on metal. I walk to the lobby and look out the windows. The douchebag slammed into a police cruiser who was about to loop around and use the drive-thru himself. Of course I also went to tell the officer what just happened inside. Standing at the counter of the pizza place I work at, lady storms in and slams a pizza down on the counter. This isn't the freaking pizza I ordered. What the heck are you going to do about it? She asked. I look at the pizza, then at my buddy Nick, and turn back to her and say, nothing. She then goes on a long rant telling how we are going to be fired, how stupid and incompetent we were. She actually told me I must be retarded, then asked why the heck we weren't going to do anything. I said because that pizza came from the pizza shop across the street. I think she actually managed to shrink in size and slink out looking so pathetic and beating I almost felt bad for laughing till tears dripped down my face as she slunk off. I worked for an online banking help desk, and this 18-year-old lad phoned up saying he had seen a transaction for £7 to AllPayNet, and because he didn't recognize it, He decided the bank were robbing him of £7 and that I was in on it and I was a thieving little prick. Then he gets his dad on the phone who stuck up for his crap of a son, saying I was a pathetic scumbag for stealing £7 off an 18-year-old boy, even though it was a debit card transaction and I simply worked in the department which helped people use online banking. But anyway, I phoned our debit card services to see if they could give any more information, and boy could they. I then had the pleasure of relaying back to this little crap's equally crappy father the following. Hi sir, thanks for holding. I've checked with our debit card services team and I now understand why your son would not have recognized the pay or paynet. That's a deliberately vague term used for discretion when the customer has subscribed to online pornography. That's what it was for. Your son has been paying for online pornography. Would you like to pop him back on the phone so I can tell him it's a payment for his pornography? Or will you pass on the information? The father just muttered that the issue did not require any further investigation, thanked me for looking into it and hung up. Guy comes in and is being a complete butthole, not wanting to show it to buy beer even though he looked 20 at the oldest, constantly yelling and swearing. He also had parked in the handicap spot despite not having handicap tags or plates on his car. One of my regular customers, who is a sheriff's deputy, was also in the store, saw how the guy was acting, saw where he was parked, went out, got his ticket book, and wrote the guy a ticket. Guy realized he wasn't getting his beer, went outside, to find he was getting ticketed. I could not stop laughing. Worked at a telecom in Canada. I am no longer an employee, thank God. Lady comes in with a broken iPhone, is demanding to get a new one for free. If you don't know, in Canada the iPhone 6s is going for about $400 upfront on a 2-year contract at a minimum $80 plan. She had a good plan, but wanted it for free. She called up our loyalty team in store and spent the next 2 hours screaming at them. Finally, they agree to a deal, and she is getting it for $0. She looks at me and goes, I do not want a case, and AppleCare is a scam. We work on commission, so this essentially meant I was getting nothing and ruining my numbers. She keeps telling me to hurry up through the setup and I was trying to get them out of the store with everything transferred over and set up. She grabs the phone and starts marching off saying I was a terrible employee. She gets 3 steps out of the store and drops the phone. Shattered screen and white screen of death. She ran back in asking what I can do. I shrugged and went, sorry, but AppleCare sure would have helped, eh? Warehouse worker here. Customers have to show a card to shop, and even though we're not technically a grocery store, we don't allow pets. One dude tried to power walk past the employee at the entrance door holding a big pit bull puppy on a leash. We stopped him and told him he couldn't bring his dog inside and he lost IT. He's our best customer and he's here 5 times a week and he owns stock. Blah. Whatever. He demanded to know why we don't allow dogs. We explained how it's a food safety issue, especially with an untrained puppy. At this point our manager came over and just waved him through. BC no backbone customers always right. Well, not even 5 minutes later this dog squats in the middle of the main aisle and pees, followed by poop. The man turned so red and dragged the dog towards the exit, abandoning his groceries. We stopped him and asked him nicely to please clean up after his pup. That's the reason we don't allow them, sir. Worked at Best Buy 10 or so years ago. This happened on Black Friday. Most of the customers were in bad moods since they'd been waiting hours to come in and stand in more lines. But this one lady was a raging bee. After yelling at everyone in my department about how she needed the laptop that was on sale despite it being sold out, she proceeds to tell us she'll have the store closed down because she works with the city and knows the fire marshal and we have too many people in the store. So she calls him, we tell her to leave, and nothing happens to the store. However, we called them as well to report what she'd said, and she got fired from her job for abuse of power. I worked at a restaurant that was very popular for brunch and Mother's Day was probably our busiest day of the year. I had a customer call the evening before and asked for a table for 6 and he was incredibly rude when I informed him that this would simply be an impossibility. He kept getting more and more worked up, asking me to speak to my manager. At first I didn't want to pass the phone over. My manager wasn't the nicest guy and we were in the middle of a busy dinner shift, but my manager came up behind me and demanded to know why I had been on the phone for so long. I was like, frick it, this customer isn't going to listen to me anyways and gave the phone to Mac. Mac asked how he could help, listened for about 15 seconds before telling this dude something like, "So you're tying up my hostess in the middle of dinner even though she's already told you nicely that we can't fit you and your goddamn family in the night before our busiest day of the year, frick you buddy," and hung up the phone. I'm not sure if being a public defender counts as a retail or service worker, but considering that I provide criminal defense to indigent clients facing deprivation of their rights and freedom, I'll consider it service nonetheless. I was representing a scumbag client who was a massive M-head who got high and beat the heck out of her 8-year-old daughter with a belt after she accidentally broke mommy's M-pipe. She was charged with child cruelty and possession of M, and, given her criminal record, the DA's plea offer was 3 years of prison. Needless to say, my client didn't want to go to prison for giving that C what she deserved and started freaking out at me when I told her that's the best offer I was going to get from the DA, and it was either accept that offer or go to trial. I further pointed out the mountain of evidence against her, primarily, the photographs of her daughter's injuries, the bloody belt that was recovered from her bedroom, the broken M-pipe WM residue in it, and the fact that her daughter was going to testify against her at trial. After she was done cursing me out, calling me a public pretender, and every other derogatory name she could think of, she fired me and somehow managed to hire a private attorney for the low price of $8,000. I still don't know how she managed to come up with that, but I have plenty of reliable guesses. The private attorney guaranteed her that he could win her case at trial, and that's exactly what she chose to do. Long story short, the private attorney clearly never even read this woman's file before trial. The trial lasted roughly 3 hours. The jury was literally out for only 5 minutes, and the judge sentenced her to 10 years of prison. It was a good day. More than a few decades ago I worked at Denny's. I had 2 male customers that decided to dine and dash, got their license plate number and reported it to the cops and jokingly mentioned that they didn't even tip. Later that night they got pulled over for DUI. Cops recognized license plate number from the report, brought them both back to the restaurant and forced them to pay the bill. After he was done paying, the cop just stood there and looked at them and said, "Well," the guy sheepishly handed me my tip. I used to return customer credit cards by setting them on the square podium, used to swipe them so they ended up right by them when I swung the screen around from them to sign and such. One lunch rush, takeout restaurant, one lady decided this was an offense of the highest order and yelled at me for not placing it directly in her hand. I stupidly engaged her and tried to explain that I did that for everybody, which got me a continued lecture about how she is the customer and good service is doing what she wants and so on. There were about a dozen people eating at our tables and 5 people in the line behind her, so she was straight hamming it up, making sure everyone saw her putting me in my place. Unfortunately for her, the dramatic performance proved to be a bit too distracting and she stormed out without her infant. This was of course noticed by pretty much everyone in the building since she had just made herself the center of attention. One of the customers even had to run after her and stop her from driving away. For the record, there is no real subtle way to pick up a full-size child carrier. Lady lays into me for the amount of the bill, called me every bad word in the English language, says we overbilled her. She requested I go through her order. Come to find out we underbilled her by a $1,000 due to a misplaced zero. The silence on the other line was so beautiful. Worked at a gas station some odd years ago, and the week before it had been snowing a lot, so the gas tankers got delayed due to safety reasons. A customer came in a pretty new Mercedes-Benz, something like SLS 400 or something, and wanted the premium gas. I explained to him that the takers are delayed and we currently don't have any premium gasoline and that he could try the next station down the block. He started swearing at me personally like I has control over the gas delivery. He sped off, tires screeching, only to have his rear tire hit the curb. His rim got fricked up really bad and couldn't drive it. I laughed at him. It wasn't the customer, it was the manager. She was awful. She was rude, intentionally picked out favorites and gave them presents in front of everyone even when they didn't like her and tried to avoid it. Messed up schedules on purpose for people she didn't like, etc etc. Worst manager ever. So there was a huge storm coming in, and people were really worried about it. Like the news telling people to stay home, other businesses closing, etc. So it was up to her to either keep our store open or close it. Of course, she kept it open. Because schools closed, only half our scheduled employees showed up. The rest called in, and she called her favorites and told them they didn't have to come in. Well, as the 5 of us who showed up were standing there, watching out the front windows, there were 0 customers. She starts yelling at us, threatening to write us all up etc. And we are like, no one is here, all the work is done. We are watching the wind bend trees over and worried about if we are safe we'll be able to get home. Right about this time we hear a super loud crashing noise. Ka-chunk, 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 wham. As the industrial air conditioner on top of the building got blown off. Like it rolled along the roof, then went flying into the parking lot, right onto her car. It was so perfect it was surreal. Dead center. Smashed her car flat. Like if she had been in it, she would have died. And it only happened because she parked right up by the building, where we had specifically been told not to park. All our cars were out in the farthest corner of the lot. We later found out her car wasn't paid off. It was some stupidly expensive BMW or something, and her insurance didn't cover the damage because it was an act of God. As a teenager I was working part-time at a convenience store. I was being trained by the late night cashier. This dude comes in and grabs a bunch of cans of vegetables and such, and comes to the counter and stacks the cans in a very specific way, like a weird kind of pyramid on the counter. As the experienced cashier, my trainer, takes each can off the pyramid and rings it up. She reaches the end of the stack and we realize that the weirdo has his dong out and has it laying on the counter behind the cans. Without saying a word, the trainer grabs one of the big heavy metal cans of beans and slams it down as hard as she can on the guy's dong. He screamed an incredible scream of searing pain, grabbed his dong, and ran out of the store. She to me, calmly, you get all kinds on the late shift. Way back when I used to be a retail slave I worked at an electronics retailer. Still in business. We had some guys going around trying to lift DVDs. They were cutting the barcodes off to remove the sensors so they wouldn't go off on their way out. LP notices and starts sending over floor reps to see how they are doing, if they need help, etc. Finally LP goes over and just hands them a hand basket. BC they had nothing in their hands, it was showing them we knew. So they start wandering around ditching the DVDs as they go, and as soon as they drop one an employee comes up and grabs it. So they start freaking out. They dump the rest and just book it towards the door full speed. No one chased BC, they ditched all the merchandise. As they exit one of the dudes turns around and starts flipping everyone off yelling frick. Store name. As he's doing this he steps off the curb into the front driveway in the parking lot and promptly gets hit by a car. It was in the lot so it was only hard enough to knock him over, but he had to scramble to hit feet and keep running. Let me preface my story by saying I work near Baltimore. Yeah, so I manage a plus size women's clothing store. We actually get a surprising amount of, let's call them non-traditional customers. Guys who need a dress for a charity show, cross-dressers, gender fluid people, transgender women, and drag queens aren't unheard of. So a drag queen comes into the store to pick up some shoes they ordered online. They must have been either coming from or going to a show because they were still in full makeup. I get their name and during our conversation another customer walks in. I call out a greeting and say something like, I'll be right with you. I go to the back room, and it takes a minute to go through all the web orders. I find the one I need and am on my way back to the counter when the new customer throws her arm out to stop me from passing. She then says, I am a new customer and I've been here for 20 minutes and no one has spoken to me. A. I greeted her when she came in and B. She had only been in the store for 5 minutes at that point. I resigned myself to groveling, but before I could say anything the drag queen stomps over, glares at the customer, and says, B. She said hello to you. Complete with sassy finger snaps. The queen then made a big show of thanking me for getting her package, and gave me a big sparkly kiss on the cheek before she left. The other customer sheepishly paid for her Spanx and didn't make eye contact when I told her to have a good day. I work at hotel's front desk. One day we had an Armenian guest who was claiming the room was not up to his standards and decided to make a big deal about it the next morning. He was so rude to the point of almost making a coworker cry of desperation because she refused to compensate the night, as his arguments seemed really fake and invalid. Once he saw he was not going to get nothing back, he threw his receipt on the floor and power walked his way out into a very clean glass door that was recently cleaned. His sunglasses broke, causing him a small cut on the upper part of his nose. My coworker and I couldn't stop laughing the second he walked out, even more mad. Looking back, I see a lot of my old high school bullies' jocks are leading horrible lives of endless crappy jobs and pregnant, bitchy girlfriends. Anyone have any examples of real life bully karma? A kid that bullied me pretty mercilessly in middle school emailed me a while ago. He told me that a lot had happened to him that made him look back on his life. His fiancée had cheated on him while he was in Afghanistan and had been preventing him from seeing his children, etc. And he realized how cruel he had been back then. He apologized and, 9 years later, we met up, had a couple of beers, and established a tenuous friendship. Feels good. Nice. Seems like he matured quite a bit. Unfortunate it took some traumatic events to make it happen. The biggest bully from my grammar school is now an exterminator. 30 years later, he still can't pick on anyone his own size. That's practically poetic. One fellow who used to bully me all the time throughout the school wrote a long paragraph of apology in the yearbook and wished me luck. He is doing alright now. My old bully died in a fraternity hazing accident. I was picked on in high school by this guy, but joke's on him, he spends his whole day making stupid comments on Reddit. A fate I wouldn't wish on anyone. This varsity wrestler beat me up in his super senior year of high school when I was a sophomore. When I was a senior I took his little sister to prom. Got lucky multiple times that prom weekend, and a few times on his living room couch later. I don't know what happened to the bullies in high school cause I don't care about them. A lot of the bullies from my school became cops. Mostly because the police academy at the community college was the easiest thing to get into besides the photography department. My mother did inform me I don't live in the same town anymore. That one guy that once broke a friend of mine's arm while waiting for the bus became a cop and recently tasered an innocent dude while he was having a smoke breakout behind his workplace. Now the smoking guy is suing him in the city for a whole bunch of money and will probably win. That's bully karma at its finest. Life unfortunately doesn't quite work that way. One of my classmates was a cheerleader in high school, then a cheerleader for a national basketball team, then in jail for something like domestic abuse. Another got into and attended MIT, dropped out, became a successful male fashion model. What's the point? High school is such an unstable time for folks. People tend to change a lot in the years following high school. As much fun as it is to see a jerk get their due, I think that people that look to see how their bullies turned out care way too much about what happened in the past. The one bully who terrorized me, but who was a gifted student, saw me in the gym and actually came up to apologize about the way he treated me in our youth. I was somewhat sad to find out he was working as a busboy because it seems like his intellect is being wasted. I accepted his apology, but it doesn't make the memories go away. Grammar. Choose to remember your strength and adaptability instead. If you never knew how bad bullying made you feel, you might have done it to someone else. There was this guy, we will call him Jose, who was a big gangster in junior high and high school. He was already shaving and had a goatee in junior high and he had the pick of the ladies in the school. He was very cocky, rude to everyone, and just a general prick. I had him for a couple of classes but steered clear of him for the most part, but we knew of each other. Fast forward 2 years after graduation, I run into him at a Taco Bueno. He is working as a painter with a bunch of illegals and his face is jacked. He smiled and shook my hand when he saw me. Told me that after high school about 10 guys that he messed with all throughout school got together and jumped him. He spent 3 weeks in the hospital and had to go to physical therapy. That's some direct retribution right there. I'd say it's a 50/50 split. Plenty of the biggest buttholes grew up and got great jobs and make much more than you. The phenomenon you reference probably has a lot to do with the reasons they were bullying in the first place. They probably had all sorts of horrible fricked up crap happening at home. And bullying is the easiest way for an adolescent to pass on the pain and deal with it. Those sort of situations led to all sorts of issues that will ultimately sabotage their attempts to lead normal, productive lives. Sharing this with my 12-year-old son. I apologize for my foul language. My husband and I took a trip to TX to see his daughter from his previous marriage. On the way there, he told me about this one friend of the ex's family that used to hang around that I would meet at this little reunion. One day, husband and dude were walking down the sidewalk and happen across a cat. Dude picks up the cat by the scruff of the neck and body slams it to the sidewalk, then laughs as the poor creature writhes in pain. Now, my husband would never hurt a creature, but he also did not say anything to dude because my husband is small and dude was huge and also had a temper. Of course, I'm absolutely disgusted and I hate this man that I've never met. I'll mention that husband had not seen or heard from this guy in over 20 years, so this was a long time span. Turns out, dude was in a construction accident and hurt his back permanently. He is in constant pain all the time. He wears a morphine patch and probably takes a handful of RX painkillers, and maybe some that are not RX, every day to manage the pain, but nothing totally gets rid of the pain. That is sweet karma. TLDR. Dude breaks a cat's back for jollies, ends up with permanent back damage. I want to straight up bludgeon any people who hurt animals like that. During my elementary and junior high school years, a group of guys were relentless bullies, but one guy was especially horrible to me. They beat me up regularly and constantly ridiculed me for being gay. I wasn't out yet though, and for taking advanced math courses at the community college. I'm now 22 and graduated with a double major and double minor from a top university. Have a great job and am a proud gay man. He dropped out of high school, became a drug dealer and got arrested multiple times. To be clear, my upvote is for your success. Screw the bully. He never turned his sad life around, but you sir, are amazing. One bloke stabbed me in the chest because I'm a gay. He promptly died 3 weeks later. Drug OD they say. All the douchebags and bullies from my high school are now successful lawyers, traders, doctors. It would seem that bullying and being douches gave them the skills to step over people to get to the top. A good 50% of the girls in my graduating class were knocked up within a year of high school. I didn't really have anything against most of them, really, but holy crap are they stupid. Sounds like my hometown. So many stupid babies just waiting to be born. I was a bully in high school. Karma hit me with a rage problem by 23. I really gave myself a rage problem, to be honest. Although I'm clean now and I have an advanced degree and in law school, so meh, it comes around. I'm not in butthole anymore. There was this butthole a year ahead of me named Justin. He was an all-around dickwad. He once put a Ziploc bag full of vegetable oil in my backpack, which later popped open and ruined all my crap. Also the constant torment kinda sucked. 2 years ago, I was home from college for spring break. My great-grandmother had just died, so I was suited the frick up. I was also left her Mercedes-Benz, which I sold to help pay for my student loans. Couldn't afford the insurance taxes. So there I am, pulled into a Hess station in a black Benz E320, wearing a black business suit and a very nice silk tie. At the pump opposite me was this freaking doucher bag, filling up a rusted out Monte Carlo wearing what looked like overalls. He'd seen me. I decided to be a dong. As I started the car, I rolled down their window and whistled at him. He turned around, and I gave him the finger and yelled, "Hey Justin, right here, buddy. It's my crowning achievement." When I was in 6th grade, a boy threatened to stab me with a box cutter in tech ed class. Of course the teacher didn't take too kindly to this and he was sent to the office and punished. The next day in school, his older sister, who was in 8th grade and twice my size, came up behind me in the hallway and shoved me. From then on she made fun of me, calling me ugly and a lesbian because I had short hair and played sports and video games. She was really preppy, shallow, obsessed with her appearance and had lots of boyfriends. I recall her and her friends playing with condoms in the back of the bus, if that gives you any idea of what she's like. I recently came across pictures of her on Facebook in a friend's album. She has gained weight and her eyes looked sad and dead in all the pictures. On the other hand, I went on to become a fairly successful model and am happy and confident in who I am. TLDR. Was bullied for being a tomboy. Got called ugly and dark a lot. I went on to model and she got fat. Nah, here's what I noticed. Alpha guys jocks who were not charismatic ended up with sales jobs. The popular kids who came from well-to-do families are mostly in well-to-do positions of power and influence even if they were crappy students. The smart, nerdy kids grew into themselves and became successful, desirable adults. Some of them became knockouts, either in the looks department or career-wise. The dead-end kids, of which bullies share some overlap with, all have sad stories. Bad luck, karma, and poor choices conspired to put them in a place with a bleak future and an equally bleak present. Had one when I was younger. I was dressed up in a nice suit, going to my parents' country club for Easter brunch and had my girlfriend with me, who was pretty attractive. I was working and also had just bought a Eclipse convertible. Stopped at a White Hen to get a pack of cigarettes, and my biggest middle school bully was working there. He took one look at me, and then looked out at my car, top down, hot girl, and just shook his head. I paid and didn't say a word to him and left, but it was a pretty incredible day. This guy had made my life a living heck for 3 years before I left and got bused to a private high school 15 miles away in another town. TLDR. Saw middle school bully when I was high on life. Ultimate closure. Probably shaking his head at you driving an Eclipse convertible. Please tell me you took the next step and had your tubes tied. There was a bully at the high school I went to that seemed to get away with murder. This guy did whatever he wanted, whenever he wanted, to whomever he wanted, and I never once saw him get in any trouble. He and another of his little pack even jumped my buddy in the locker room once, and somehow my friend ended up with the suspension, while they got away scot-free. Anyways, fast forward about 6 years. This bully is still in our town, and from what I'd hear, still being in butt. He was driving home from somewhere one day about 5 AM, presumably fricked up as all heck. He still had somewhat of a reputation for being a hardcore partier. He hits an old man out on a jog and drives away. The next morning there is a story in the paper about a police officer, mere days from retirement, that was killed in a hit and run early the previous morning. The former bully gets caught because he was in his work van and tried to explain away the man-shaped dent in the front by saying he hit a deer. So when his boss is about to turn him in, Mr. Bully goes down to the police station in another county, where apparently his grandfather was some kind of bigwig, and turns himself in, still insisting he didn't do it. Unfortunately for him, while he was talking to someone on the phone, a small group of police officers overhear him on the phone saying, "I'm in a lot of trouble. That guy I hit died. He's doing all kinds of hard time now." Grade school was not easy for me. I was a little different at a small Catholic school, maybe about 20 kids. I had one friend named Scott who got along with everyone, but the rest of guys either didn't care for me or would be generally negative towards me in our interactions inside and outside of class. Nothing physical, but from my memory it was always about me being worse than they were at things. Sports, school etc. or stupid in the things I said, asking me questions and mocking my answers. One named Josh, who seemed to hate most everything about me, lived in my neighborhood and I would generally avoid him. I ended up switching to one of the public middle schools and found a much more welcoming peer group. Time went on and one Monday in high school I came in the morning and noticed a lot of the girls were crying. This was a decently small town, so the student bodies of the public and Catholic schools knew each other well for the most part. Josh was pretty well liked by most other people and had a circle of friends at my school. I'm unnerved by there being more than a few girls in the hallway crying, but don't think much of it. My first period class was bio and I sat next to a girl named Amber who I had enjoyed a friendly rapport with for most of the semester, as bio wasn't really her strong suit. I came in, sat down and noticed that her makeup was smeared and finally had to ask what had happened. She and Josh were very close and she told me that he had been in a car accident on Sunday and had died. I would later learn that he was driving to visit friends that lived outside of town and had carelessly driven through a train intersection that doesn't have gate arms. Apparently he didn't bother to stop and look for an oncoming train and had his stereo up loud enough that he didn't hear it either. The train hit his car and he was thrown from the vehicle, presumably dying on impact or shortly thereafter. I would also later learn that this train had a camera installed on the front of it and they provided his family with the footage of the collision for legal reasons. I still can't imagine the horror his mother had to go through watching that video. I went to his wake and remember feeling pretty numb. I had hated this guy so much for a significant portion of my life, but I had a surge of feeling that I didn't really believe that he deserved to die at 16. The wake was a pretty surreal experience for me. I was surrounded by those who had either bullied me or were indifferent about my existence for several formative years for me. I was watching them in pain for losing a friend and peer. I couldn't feel spite or hate for them anymore. They were human beings who were grieving the death of another. I just look back and see that even as children they were people. Some people are terrible. Some people can show goodness. How nice of you. I would have to resist every urge to laugh at his death to their faces. I probably would cave to my temptation. Riding the bus in middle school was heck. Two boys in particular were the worst. They were the overgrown type of 13-year-olds who looked like 30-somethings, and they absolutely terrified me. I was the go-to girl to make fun of in general at that school, but the bus rides were terrifying. I found out the camera at the front of the bus never actually records when I went to the principal for help and was told they couldn't do anything about it. These boys pulled out their dongs and tried to get me to look at them, sang songs about how disgusting I was, slammed me into the back window of the bus, literally tossed me around until I had bruises on my arms and legs, etc. And all the bus driver did was tell them to be quiet. Frick public school. I didn't tell my mom what was happening until 8th grade graduation because I figured if the principal couldn't help me, she couldn't either. It was completely fricked. One of those guys ended up with a felony, if I'm remembering correctly, for stealing a Rolls-Royce Phantom and trying to sell it the same day. Apparently the owner saw the car in a parking lot about 2 blocks from his house. You're a genius, have a great life. At my 10-year reunion, a woman apologized for pulling a prank on me. In 11th grade, someone had handed me a paintball but told me it was a gumball. Having never seen a paintball before, I popped it in my mouth without hesitation and proceeded to swallow latex paint and then vomit up my entire lunch. She told me she felt terrible, but I never knew it had been her idea to do it. I laugh about it now, and forgave her immediately. TLDR. 11-year-old prank apologized for and forgiven. Mine had a heart attack at 24. Turns out steroids, C and brawling was a bad combo. My cousin married a great guy a few years back who grew up in the town over from me. One day he asked me if I knew a certain name, because the guy had gone to my high school. Sure enough, it was the guy who tormented me in elementary school, and was too jacked for me to fight in high school, whose name I hoped never to hear again. Apparently the two of them worked in the same office. It was soon after my cousin's marriage and I didn't want to act like I was whining to someone who was now family. So I said, yeah, we went to elementary school together. I can't really speak to anything about him since. Fast forward about a year, and I'm hanging out with the new cousin-in-law again. He says, oh by the way, you hated, didn't you? He had figured it out by my response. I try to make a point of praising people who aren't around, and I'm sort of upbeat in general, and, since he already knew, I admitted it and told him some horror stories. Oh, you're gonna love this then, he says. Turns out they didn't just work in the same office. My cousin-in-law was the dude's boss. He had only hired him as a favor to someone else, thinking maybe he was just in a bad situation elsewhere. But nope, he was a terrible employee and was right on the cusp of being fired. So when my cousin-in-law asked me about him and I clearly had nothing good to say, that decided it. I'd like to say that a part of me regrets even the small part I played in revenge on this guy, but really I don't regret it at all, and I just love the fact that it played out exactly as the 9-year-old me would have liked. It gets better. TLDR. My old bully got fired, at least in part because he bullied me. Mostly he built his own cage, though. Had he been a decent guy, you'd have never heard about it. Had he gotten his butt handed to him a couple of times, he might have done that. Kick bullies' asses. It's a public service, and good for them later in life. We had no bullies per se. We had a famous killer and an even more famous criminal in my high school, but they were cool to me. But the people who were jerks and buttholes pretty much turned out to have crappy lives. It's only idiots who think that liars and cheats get ahead. In reality, people see through their crap and don't want anything to do with them. Maybe not the karma you're looking for, but here it goes. I got in a fist fight with a friend over them ragging on me 24/7 for a couple years. The subsequent fallout with the group just led to a bunch of problems with me trying to find new friends when I was 13-15. Man, it really sucked. One day when I was 18 and on my way home from orchestra, I pulled into a McDonald's for a burger. Turns out he was working the register and looked at me with the most sincere smile and said, "Hey Mark, I haven't seen you in forever. How are things? We should catch up sometime. Sorry about the past." I was dumbfounded, said something like, "Yeah, thanks man. Sure thing." Maybe that wasn't so much about karma, but it was nice to see the guy really changed. Some people get more mature and realize they were buttholes. Others continue to be dongs and blame the world for their problems. In high school, the quarterback of our football team was an all-star named Hunter Wall. He was a piece of crap who liked to frick with underclassmen and people that were smaller than him. He got a scholarship to play for OU, which he quickly lost after being arrested for breaking into someone's home and stealing marijuana, easily found on Google. Also, at one point, an opposing football team spray painted Hunter Wall as a dong in huge letters on the side of an abandoned but very visible gas station in the middle of town. Rarely have I laughed harder at a local news story. Glad to hear he really was a pose. Makes me feel better that we didn't lose a true talent. I got bullied to crap throughout all of my school years. I was always the bigger girl. I never had pretty hair, never had pretty clothes, and I never acted like a girl. I'd rather have been out playing footy with the boys and playing computer games. Well, secondary school was supposed to be the big break for me. Yeah, like frick was it. The first 3 years of high school were living heck because of a guy who started all the crap who was 4 years ahead of me in school. This is where my anxiety stemmed from. I got picked on and constantly abused by kids 3-4 years older than me. One stupid bee decided to start a fight with me on the bus for no reason, claiming I was talking to her cousin when he blatantly admitted he doesn't even know her. I stood there, took the pushing about, then lost it and walk off at the first stop. Fast forward 3 years after I left school. I'm chatting to an old school friend I bumped into at a supermarket and had a catch up. We weren't great friends and she was a bit of a bee in school, but she explained about her mental health and what she went through, and I understood completely where she was coming from. Well, stupid bee who started on me 4 years before did the whole OMG, hey I haven't seen you in years, how are you doing, OMG you ride a motorbike, that is so cool, can I sit on it? My response, frick off. She seemed confused and started babbling on and I just replied with frick off. I never forgot what you did to me. I wish I'd kicked the crap out of you then and I still would now, so sit down and shut the frick up. I was talking and you interrupted. She obeyed and it felt good. I don't care if I get downvotes or hated for it, but she was a C and she made my life heck then, and I am still dealing with what happened to me. I didn't really have high school bullies, as the first 2 years of high school I was a recluse, but the people that did give me crap I can take comfort after running into them at parties that I'm more successful, on my way to a good career, doing something with my life, way more physically stronger than them. I know it sounds vain, but in high school this was always flaunted in front me. Little did I know I was extremely late bloomer, and everyone likes me for being a nice person, as opposed to high school where you were often persecuted for it. Basically everything they tried to obtain in high school I've obtained in reality. My middle school bully went to Princeton and is still a complete butthole. Oh, karma, you said? That crap doesn't exist. All through middle school and high school, there was this cheerleader named Nicole who tormented me every day. Horrible, mean bee. Fast forward 3 years after graduation, I'm working at a prestigious daycare center for high-income families. A very well-known center in my area, making the big bucks. On my lunch break one day, I was craving something greasy and terrible for me, so I rolled through the drive-thru at Wendy's, still wearing my work uniform with the unmistakable logo on the shirt, when lo and behold, Nicole hands me my food. She saw me, she knew who I was, she also saw the shirt, and the karma is a fiery C just like you smirk on my face. She was visibly embarrassed. Fast food has never been so delicious. Moral of the story, now I'm freaking starving and I want a cheeseburger. Till there are prestigious daycares. One of the biggest buttholes and idiots I ever knew in high school is now a full-time Bible thumper walking door to door trying to preach. Does that count? Yes. My junior year of high school, a girl spread rumors that I fricked a guy on a trampoline at a party. This lie almost ruined my relationship with my boyfriend. After this, she had the nerve to ask me why I didn't get her a birthday present. Once I got past the absurdity of it, I was pretty angry. Cut to present day. I'm a senior a month away from graduation. I'm headed to college in Oregon. She's got herpes, a kid and no diploma. Checkmate. B. Just noticed that the cool kid of my graduating class said this on Facebook. Background check and drug test came back clean, so I start orientation on Friday for Walmart. I am truly blessed. Sick. By the way, got 10 likes. This girl who humiliated me for asking her out ended up getting pregnant with twins and couldn't continue high school. Well dodged, sir. I think the two I'm thinking of were kind of bullyish for a lot of people, but now one is a dermatologist and the other is a cardiologist. Proof that while some bullying is skin deep, other types can go straight to the heart. A girl that punched me in the face in high school is now pregnant by a guy that I dated first. How does my pee taste? B. I know this one will probably be buried, but I had the exact opposite of bully karma. I got to watch my bully ride the bench of the Indianapolis Colts as they won the Super Bowl. He has a ring. I will never ever go to a high school reunion ever again. Most of the girls that teased me in high school are now single mothers who still live at home, or they recently graduated college and are working at places like Walmart. I, on the other hand, will be married for 3 years on the 18th, have 2 beautiful daughters and own my own home. Feels good, man. My high school bully is battling breast cancer right now. I don't get any satisfaction from this. That's terrible. Nobody deserves that, comma. Only one guy bullied me for a bit. He ended up marrying into money and now drives a freaking Lamborghini while I serve up freaking cough at Starbucks. Epic win colon. Reddit. What is your best instant karma story? I was in the passing lane on the highway, slowly coming up on a couple of cars in the right lane. The speed limit was about to decrease ahead and another car came up behind me going pretty fast. Instead of gazing it to get ahead of the traffic to my right, I slowed down and pulled in behind them, with the car behind me right on my butt. Once I got into the right lane, the car floored it and passed me, honking the horn, and the passenger's body was half out of the car window yelling at me and flipping me off as they passed. Turns out the car I pulled in behind was an unmarked state trooper who promptly pulled them over. The justice. I'm an old guy, 46, and I used to buy newspapers. One day I paid for one, but took 2 papers, because I was sick of co-workers rifling through my paper. As I walked off with both newspapers, I noticed that my shirt tail got stuck in the newspaper box when it slammed shut. I had to put in another $0.25 to get my shirt out. Tell me more about the old days, Grandpa. I was pulled over by police for speeding. Second time in 30+ years driving. Before the officer got out of his car, I made sure my window was rolled down, shut my truck off, turned on interior light, it was nighttime, and put both of my hands on the steering wheel. He told me how much he appreciated this and sent me on my way with a verbal warning to pay attention to speed limit. Was out for dinner with my then fiancée, now wife, and her dad, my now father-in-law. He's a bit of a dong to her. He got divorced and remarried, loves those kids more than my wife, gives her crap over too many things, etc. etc. So we're at the end of dinner. Father-in-law offers to pay for the meal. Okay, that's nice. My wife asks to get her leftovers boxed and she'll take them home. He starts with, well, you'll just leave them in the fridge, then they'll just get thrown out, blah blah. I tell him, listen, it's not your fridge, leave her alone. She and I live together at this point. He gets all mad. Don't tell me how to raise my daughter. I reply, then don't speak to my fiancée that way. He literally throws the bill and folder thing at me and says fine. You freaking pay then, and storms out. Okay, now everyone is P. I am. My fiancé is saying why did you have to start something etc. So I pay the bill and I'm just waiting for the receipt. Like we're waiting 10 minutes here. What the heck is going on? Tensions are rising. Her dad is waiting outside, just building up steam and ready to blow once we get out there. I ask the waiter, can I just get our bill and go? Oh no sir, you have to wait for the manager. Turns out they have a contest running where every bill is a winner. Normally you'll win a free drink or appetizer with your next meal. Well, we won the motherfucking grand prize, a trip for 4 to Florida. Whoever pays gets the prize. Well, guess what sucker? I paid because you stormed out like an butthole. Karma Sabi. Comma, don't tell me how to raise my daughter. You should have reminded him that she is an adult. I was a $10 HR employee at a ski resort. Found a wallet with $500 in it which I turned in. Later I was called to the office to meet the man who owned the wallet. He gave me $100 as reward. It might just be minor due, but I can't help but notice you're short a possible $400. I used to be such a dong of a 6-year-old. One time I was on a bus with my older brother coming home from soccer practice. We were seated at the back right next to the big rear window. For some odd reason I thought it'd be funny to show traffic behind us all the angles of my middle finger while staring at them with the most obnoxious facial expressions. I would wait until the bus got to a stop and proceed to do my thing when the bus shut its door and accelerated away. I was getting bored as most people would just ignore it and the reactions weren't as amusing. I decided my game needed more thrill. Instead of flipping off oncoming traffic, my main target changed to pedestrians. Here's where it goes wrong. The bus got to a stop, picked up the waiting people, and I had found my new target, a very buff black man. As I hear my cue, which was the noise of the doors closing, I proceeded to up my game by showing him both of my fingers and sticking out my tongue. This guy, however, built like an athlete, looking mad as frick, didn't think it was all that funny. He sprinted alongside the bus, matching its speed for at least a block until the bus arrived at the next stop. The bus was not that packed, but the people who were in it witnessed this big chunk of rage giving chase and getting onto the bus. I cowered behind my brother's back in tears, who had up till now been oblivious to my shenanigans. Turned out the black guy was pretty cool about it and just told me not to do it again. He even gave me a piece of bubblegum afterwards. TLDR. I flipped off a giant black man. He gave me some bubblegum. I read such a suck and instantly D. I saw this lost dog sign in the neighborhood. The dog had a distinct face, so when I saw it, only a few blocks away, I was like, no crap. So I picked it up and took it home. The whole family was there, and they all cried and thanked me. The next week when I started a new year of high school, the husband father was my English teacher. I didn't do crap and made an A in that class. Good man. Losing a dog is awful. Me, my brother, and our friend decided to be funny and get on an elevator ahead of our other friend so we could get to the hotel room first and lock our other friend out for shits and giggles. We got trapped on the elevator for an hour and a half while our other friend that we ditched got to chill by the pool for that time. I guess we deserved it. Looks like you got elevator shafted, bro. Negative experience. Well, it wasn't negative for me. I was coming onto a freeway with my big rig, signaling and smoothly switching lanes while keeping half an eye on a car behind me that had been crowding me pretty hard. It was raining. As soon as he hit the merge ramp that he happened to be following me up, he gunned it in an attempt to pass me, cutting into the no drive zone, clearly marked as such. It's called a gore point. BTW. Trivia. Problem being, my cab is 60 feet ahead of him. I'm already legally merging, and 50% of my whole rig already occupies the lane he wants. I guess if you have your head in your butt, it's easy to assume that the truck in front of you consists of nothing more than just the final 10 feet of the trailer. I don't know why, but this dude, and it's almost always a dude that does this, flips out. He screeches so hard back into his lane that I can literally feel the road tremble. He's blaring his horn, flashing his lights, and I'm just cruising, calm as frick. I watch traffic in my drive side mirror, and when I see a break, I suspect what's coming. Yep, he jerks into the left lane, floors it, gets beside my cab honking the whole way. He serves at me. It's wet out. I do not react. Too dangerous. And then cuts me off. Expected. Here's the delicious surprise. He jerks into place in front of me, jams his brakes and just totally loses control of his vehicle. It is suddenly sideways at 45 miles per hour. I'm nowhere near him, having already slowed. As I watch, his car continues to spin until it's facing me, then it whips back forward while heading straight into the ditch, where it plows earth like a farm tool. In front of all of us there on the freeway. I'm stopped. The left lane has stopped and we're just watching as this guy slowly gets out of his car, which looks pretty damaged, or at least really freaking stuck. I see that other drivers are getting out to render aid, and some are on their phones, so I just gear up out of there nice and calm. Insta karma. Felt awesome. Dude, truck drivers are my highway cheat sheet. If you guys are hauling butt down a stretch of road, it's pretty safe to assume that I can too. You guys shield me from the sun if it's too glaring. Trap douchebag cars, and let me slide next to you if I didn't slow down for that cop we just passed. I found a purse left in a cart outside a store I used to work at. Against policy I opened the purse and found a name and then contacted the lady, and it was her purse and she was frantic looking for it. So I waited at the store after hours for her to come by and get the purse, and she gave me an envelope, also to open when I got home, which turned out to be almost exactly how much I was short on rent. $120. She actually knew you were short on rent. That purse was planted with knowledge of your work schedule and she is watching you. Now you only have one thing to do. Lie still. She will take you. This is long but it's relevant and true. I still don't understand how it happened. I go through periods of insomnia, and I have stayed up through countless nights over the years. One such night probably about 1.5 years ago, I went to 7-Eleven at like 6:30 am. For I don't remember what. On the way out I see this native homeless guy I call Hobo Joe. I've seen him around my city Norfolk, VA, for years. Anyways, I see him and as usual he's begging for change. I don't mind helping this guy out because he doesn't spend it on booze. He legitimately needs food. So I go back in and buy him 2 microwave 7-Eleven hamburgers and heat them up. Side note, I dropped one on the floor and never told him. I give him the burgers and proceed to Tropical Smoothie which opens at 7 am. I park the car and open the door. Look down and what do I see? A fresh $20 on the white line of the parking spot. Freaking nice. So that's cool, but then this is the really crazy part. I come back out of Tropical Smoothie and as I approach my car, what do I find? Another $20. In the exact same spot. I checked my pocket. The first one was still there. A glitch in the matrix? TLDR. Fed a homeless beggar and then immediately found $40 on the ground next to my car. That was Hobo Joe's final payoff for the mob loan that had made him homeless. He had got up early that morning to pay them off, then reunite with his wife and children who'd been searching for him this past decade. He tried to run from the mob, but he was full from having just eaten 2 burgers. I got a good one. This was a couple of years ago now. I was walking to the pub from work one rainy evening, across the Green Bridge in Canary Wharf, London if we have any East London Redditors here, when I saw a fat, drunken yob intentionally shove into a fairly nerdy looking guy who was walking along with his girlfriend. He stopped and accused the nerdy guy of pushing him and then gave him a volley of abuse. What follows was one of those moments so perfect, so full of justice and humor that you can't believe you've witnessed it, and it made a great anecdote in the pub. The fat guy took a huge swing at the nerdy guy, slipped because it was raining and completely missed, ending up in a flustered freaking mess on the floor. The nerdy looked bewildered and his girlfriend was desperately trying to drag him away, but he stood his ground. The fat guy, who seemed to have been angered further by his embarrassing fall, got back up and took another swing, which nerdy guy dodged. Again, fat guy slips and falls to his knees. Nerdy guy, who is apparently as ruthless as he is good at not getting punched in the face, obviously sees this as a great opportunity to get this crap over with, and so smacks the fat guy right in the face with a sweet jab. One of those punches that makes a satisfying thwack sound. Fat guy goes down once and for all, sprawled on the bridge in the rain, while nerdy guy takes his girl's hand and they carry on their merry way together. Meanwhile I head on to the pub and have a pint in his honor. Beautiful. Just beautiful. TLDR. Drunken butthole takes 2 swings at nerdy guy. Slips and misses both times. Nerdy guy takes his chance on the second slip and smacks him in the face, sending him sprawling. I was merging on the highway yesterday and this person in a bright green Porsche cuts me off and wouldn't let me in. I almost got into an accident, but luckily nobody was merging behind me, so I managed to merge onto the highway going 20 freaking miles per hour. He zipped ahead going about 90-95. About 30 minutes later, I slow down because I see a state trooper pulled someone over. I noticed it was a bright green Porsche. Suck it. I saw a Mercedes SL hauling butt down I-65 today, easily going over 100, weaving in rainy weather in his top heavy car like a frick, endangering people unnecessarily. 5 miles later, bright silver Mercedes SL on the side of the road with a flat tire in the pouring rain. I laughed so hard. We had a light snow here in Jersey one day and my friends and I wanted to make the most of it. We took a sled out and took turns laying on it on the road and pulling each other down the street with a rope. Yeah, kinda stupid, but we were bored and it was entertaining. Anyway, some buttholes in your typical bumblebee sounding Honda Civic rode by and screamed that we were F because there wasn't any snow. They then gassed the crap out of the car, lost all control, and plowed into some bushes at the end of my street. My friends and I then watched as they fought for about 20 minutes to get their Post Civic out of the bush because it couldn't get any traction and what little snow there was. We had a blood drive at school after a classmate had gotten himself into a pretty serious accident. A while after, I decided to donate again. I was told that, after they tested my previous donation, I had missed out on some childhood disease. Can't remember details. This meant my blood could be given to infants. I donate regularly now, and feel really good every time. I'm the same way. I think the disease is some combination of letters like CVA or CV or something like that. I also have a high iron count, so I usually donate the platelets or whatever it is, the machine they hook you up to. Since I'm not afraid of needles, I feel it's my duty to make up for all those people that are LOL. My brother and I were stuck in a friend's house because they had a wild guard dog that broke its chain. My brother pushes me out, so I have to run to the gate as the dog chases me. I managed to escape and went home. My brother got home 30 minutes later and went to bed crying because I told my mum he was sleeping over and I ate his dinner. I love that you ate his food as revenge. We went out with my uncle and his family for dinner at a really nice restaurant in Dallas Ft. Worth. There were 7 of us eating and we were all drinking wine and really just trying to see how much we spend on one dinner, I guess. This increasingly drunk guy from the bar kept coming up to our table and making conversation, commenting on how awesome my 6-month-old son is, etc. By the end of the night he really starts to get annoying and my uncle is discussing with us whether or not he should say something, but we tell him no, don't worry about it, he is just having a good time. He seems like a good guy. So when it comes time to pay our bill, the waiter just says, "Have a nice evening, thanks for coming in." My uncle and I are confused and ask the waiter about the check. He tells us that the guy that kept coming up to us paid our tab and that it was already done and nothing we could do about it. He even tells us that the guy does this all the time. Our bill was $1,500. My uncle sought the guy out in cigar room and gave him a big hug and the guy just said, "You have such a beautiful family. Pay it forward sometime." The guy even tipped the waiter some crazy amount from the look the waiter gave us. So I learned always be nice to the loud drunk guy in bar. You never know who is a millionaire. I liked your story until the last part. You should not be nice to people because you never know who is a millionaire, but because you should be nice to people anyways. I was out with my girlfriend at a late night movie when I spot another older couple walking. Now, I have to admit now, the guy I saw had on a long coat, cane, sunglasses at night, and one bad butt bowler type hat. That being said, I'm fairly certain that the man was a pimp or held some pimp related job. Now the wind was blowing like a mother sucker that night, and all of a sudden, I watched this guy's hat fly off out into the street. He didn't seem to mind and just kept on walking. I assumed so he wouldn't look like an utter frick chasing his hat down the road. I, on the other hand, have no shame and begin chasing the hat just for fun as well as just trying to be helpful. I bring the hat back to the guy and he says, "Thank brother, to which I reply, no problem, man. I just like chasing stuff. He goes in for a handshake, and I feel something in his hand. At this point I'm not sure if he just handed me a bag of drugs or a business card, so I walk away with my girlfriend. Once we get in the car I turn to her and say, that guy just gave me this. I unfold a crisp $100 bill and proceed to buy liquor for everyone that night. Easiest $100 I've ever made. Bad but bowler type hate. I'm imagining a tattooed muscular guy angrily throwing bowling balls down the alley and after getting 3 strikes in a row yelling fricking turkey I. My personal favorite is when a car comes speeding past you, but 30 seconds later, you meet them at the traffic lights. This never ceases to entertain me. The best is when they're stopped at a light, and you blow by at full speed because it just turned green and your lane was open. Pulled into a parking lot to go pick up a little kitten we saw curled up on the ground. Immediately ran out of gas. If we hadn't pulled in there, we would have run out of gas in the middle of a busy, traffic heavy road. Bonus, kitten. Only a Redditor would be driving on a busy, traffic heavy road and be able to spot a kitten in a parking lot. One time when I was about 8, me and my older sister were fighting over a seat. This seat was godlike and was the softest and coldest in the summer heat. She won the argument with brute force and sat down on it in victory. There was a wasp lodged into the cushion, stinger exposed, right where she sat. She is allergic and was crying the whole day. I detect a certain amount of glee. A coworker who slightly outranks me was joking busting my balls on Saturday. She was giving me a hard time, saying I was a dumbass, and they paid me too much to browse Reddit all day long. She went to sit down and somehow got her right hand stuck awkwardly underneath her. It broke her pointer finger. Through the tears she looked at me and said, "Guess I deserve that," and chuckled a little. I worked in a bar when I lived in Newfoundland. As I was on my way in one night, I saw a guy standing by road with a sign that said something like "Far from home, no place to sleep, and hungry." I waved him over and gave him $5, the only cash I had, and told him to take care of himself. This was a Thursday night, and I always worked on the back bar which never saw any traffic. I usually took home about $5 in tips for a Thursday, or $10 on a good day. That day, 3 separate people won big on the slot machines and gave me $20 tips each, and I ended up taking home about $75 in tips. Looks like Ray hit it big on the VLTs that night. Pepperoni for all. When I was 16 I lived out of my car, because I couldn't get an apartment, because no one would rent to a 16-year-old. It was an old beater, and I had to push start it everywhere. It kicked off pretty easy in reverse. I had just pulled into Walmart to buy some decent clothes, needed more than the parts for my car, and there was a purse in the basket of the cart next to me. I opened it, and inside the wallet was $1,000 in cash, and several credit cards, and an ID. Sue wanted to spend it, and I was going to score new clothes and the parts I need. So I grabbed the cash and put the purse back in the cart. When I was paying for my clothes, I just couldn't bring myself to pay with her money. So I paid with mine and went back to my car. Purse was still there, so I put the money back in and looked at the address. It was right down the road, but it took me about an hour to find. I finally get there, park in the street, and the lady is standing in her garage next to her nice new car, in a fancy neighborhood, on the phone, canceling her credit cards. I walked up and asked if she had lost her purse. I was pretty rough looking, and I could tell she was a bit nervous, so I handed it to her and told her I had to open it to find her address. She didn't really say anything, and I got in my car and left. I was disappointed because it seemed she didn't even appreciate it, but I went on to where I work. I stayed there in my car most of the time. The next day before work I woke up, went to McDonald's to get breakfast. I got to work and saw the lady leaving. Then thought, that wasn't her, just coincidence. When I went inside, the parts for my car were there, and $100, and a note saying thanks. I was confused as heck. How did she know what parts? How did she know where I worked? A few days before, I had gone over what I needed for my car and wrote it down on the back of a pay stub and the number to the parts house. Apparently, when I got out at her house, This paper came out of my car. She said in the note, she saw it after I left and picked it up. After she realized all her money was in her purse and everything, she went down and picked up the parts and dropped them off for me. Easily the nicest thing anyone has ever done. So for about an hour's drive, I got $300 worth of parts and $100 cash. The good feeling I had for weeks was worth way more than the $600 more I would have made if I kept the money. Not as generous as yours, but adopting a greyhound. Wherever we go, dog people tell us how great we are for rescuing a greyhound. Truth be told, we just got him because we heard they were lazy and we didn't want a hyper pup. Rescuing him was just a bonus. Till greyhounds are described as 45 mph couch potatoes and generally lazy. Just finished grocery shopping. Loaded the bags in my car. Get in and turn the key. Nothing. Frick. My car is dead for whatever reason. I sit there for about another 20 minutes checking the wires on my battery, making sure everything is properly in place. I just changed the battery a month ago. It can't be that. So I call my girl to pick me up. Says it's gonna be about 20 minutes. I got some time to kill. I happen to see an elderly lady pushing the cart to her car. This cart has 4x more bags than mine did. I already know it's going to be a struggle for her. I go over and offer her help. She accepts, so I help her load her groceries into her car. Go back and think, what the heck, why not give my car my try? Bam. It starts. My first thought, WTF. This car must run on karma. Karma. I've got two pretty positive ones. The first one came a few years back when I was delivering pizzas. I was taking a redelivery for an order that was wrong the first time. It was going to the shittiest hotel in our delivery area. The redelivery was a single, one topping medium pizza. I pull up and there's a guy that says he needs some cash for a tow truck. He gives me the typical sob story about wife and kids and blah blah blah. Normally I don't give into those things, but occasionally I take the approach of, well, if this guy is lying to me, shame on him. Aside from that, for some reason his story seemed more plausible. We graduated from the same high school, supposedly. Although he was a bit older than me, I cut to the chase, asked him how much cash he needed, and gave him the $7 he asked for. He ran back over to the gas station and I didn't see him again. I had a pizza to deliver. I run up the stairs to the hotel to the room, give them their replacement pizza, apologize for the first mistake and leave. As I'm walking away, the guy comes out and is like, oh wait, we forgot to give you a tip. Any tip on a redelivery is a win. So I hustle back to the room. The guy hands me a $50 bill and tells me to have a good night. I work for an events company and the morning of our biggest annual event last year, I was sent to the office to pick up a couple things. As I'm leaving the office, another guy approaches me with a similar sob story as the one above. I'm in a hurry, and I cut him off and was just like, how much do you need? He said $10 would do it. So I gave him $10 and headed on my way. Event went fine. Wasn't great in terms of the money we made. We sometimes get bonuses at my job, usually tied to this event based on the amount of money it makes. I wasn't expecting a bonus due to a subpar year, but 2 days later I had a bonus check worth 5% of my salary sitting on my desk. Would either of these events happened without the monetary donations? Probably. I like to think the karma gods were smiling on me, though. TLDR. Gave two guys with sob stories some money on separate occasions. One resulted in $50 in my pocket minutes later. One resulted in a bonus check worth 5% of my salary 2 days later. Some lady rolled down her window, yelled obscenities at me, flipped me off, then crashed into a pole going 40 miles per hour. What instant karma in driving have you guys had? Had him butthole in a Hummer riding my bus at the speed limit, down a steep, snowy hill, in the right lane, in the middle of winter, 20-30 seconds away from a light that clearly had less than 15 seconds left before turning. After about 5 seconds of being 2 feet from my bumper, he decides to change lanes and floor it in an attempt to cover the last 20 seconds of ground in the 10 seconds left. About 200 feet short of the intersection, the light turns red and the moron finally decides it would be a good time to start slowing down. He slid through the red light, clipped the rear end of a tractor trailer, and took out the traffic light at the far end of the intersection. 4 bonus marks. It turned out there was a cop a few hundred feet behind us, and, being well uphill of us, had a nice clear view of the idiot weaving through traffic and accelerating to nearly twice the speed limit towards a light they could not possibly make. I was pulling out of a parallel parking spot in front of a red light, 20 feet ahead, with cars stopped ahead and behind me. The car behind me waved me in. Such a gentleman. But the BMW sports car behind him was in a hurry, so he speeds up and around the car in front, cutting me off, all the while giving me the cockiest look like haha you're chump, because he managed to get one car length ahead. While he is sneering, he hits the Aston Martin in front of him hard. I was half overwhelmed, half dying of laughter. Justice like that is truly rare. Wannabe hits the person he's trying to be. Just a nice in his face reminder of what car he doesn't have. God, justice is sweet. There is a busy road through town where I live. It's normally 2 lanes, but over the winter the right lane was shut and the speed limit was reduced to 15 miles per hour while they laid new sewer pipe. I was driving the posted speed limit when a lady in a BMW gets behind me and starts waving her arms and flashing her lights. When we got out of the roadworks she flipped me off and stepped on the gas, accelerating to 45-55 mph. She was still accelerating when she passed the cop parked in front of the local elementary school. It was a school day, so I think that ticket was a large one. I frequently go to this park to mountain bike or road bike. It has a long loop that's only open in one direction to vehicles. The other is for pedestrians. On a nice summer evening, I am driving home when a car pulls and going the wrong way. I honk at him and point to the one-way sign. He flicks me off and yells something about me being a spick. But there is a cop car right behind me, which lights him up immediately. The same thing happened to me basically. I was driving down a 5-lane road, 2 lanes each side and a turning lane, doing 40 meters ph, in a 35 meter ph zone. I usually stick close to the speed limit because this was a major road used a lot and the cops would patrol it. I was doing 40 and getting tailgated by this dude in a Dodge Neon. I drive a 4-wheel drive F150. At one point he was so close to me, I could only see the roof of his car in my rearview mirror over my tailgate. My truck really isn't that tall. He was just really close. I just held my speed at 40. Didn't brake check him, just let him sit there. I could see he was getting pee. I didn't want to slow down because he was so close. The other lane was clear for 300 to 400 yards. I would have happily let him pass me. I just didn't want him to be behind me anymore. Finally he whips into the curb lane. It ended up being a dressed up Neon, with a wing on the back and the big mufflers that make a lot of noise. He pulled up next to me, stared straight at me taking his eyes off the road, screamed butthole and then gunned the engine. Chances are if he had taken a second to actually look at the road, he would have noticed the parked delivery truck in front of him. As he gunned his engine, he basically slammed right into the back of a delivery truck. Me, being the butthole I am, broke out into laughter, then pulled over and walked back to see if he was okay. The Neon had tucked itself underneath the delivery truck, peeling back the hood and mangling the crap out of the front clip. The delivery truck driver saw everything, as did the people further behind me. When the cops showed up, the delivery truck driver called them. He tried to insist that I ran him into the truck. Thankfully some people came to my rescue. Even the cops didn't believe his story. After I talked to the cops, I was free to leave. As I was leaving they were giving him a field sobriety test. I am not sure what happened to him. Driving my dad old trail Jeep back from a barbecue one night, an old 1965 Wills, on a back road, doing about 35 miles per hour. Now, we had this Jeep as a kind of rally support vehicle. Lights all over the place, extra battery and everything. It's about 4 AM, nobody in front or behind us, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere from behind us, comes a whatever sports car. I immediately switch to the right lane, giving him ample space to pass me. Instead of taking the offer, the jerk gets behind me and starts honking and flashing his high beams. This goes on for about a minute, while I try to figure out what exactly is he complaining about, till I figured out he was really just trying to mess up with me. By then, my dad is already half awake, when I instruct my GF to open the glove compartment, flip the 4 top switches and the one on the left. She asks me about it. and I just tell her to do it and see. She starts flipping them, and just as my dad yells from the backseat don't do it, she flips the last one. All of the lights around the center column, 6 on top, 4 each side, plus 4 high beams on the rear bumper, all light up like 1,000 suns, right in front of this jerk's eyes. He slams the brakes so hard his car immediately spins about 720 before regaining control and stopping. She flips the lights off and away we go. He just stood there behind us, half a mile or so, all the way until we got off the road, never again trying to pass us. I was riding my motorcycle down the freeway when some butthole threw half a McDonald's milkshake out of the window, still in its cup. Through some random fluke of physical dexterity, I caught it. It would have hit me in the chest, near enough. I caught up to the guy in traffic a minute later. His sunroof was open, so I returned the cup. Don't throw crap out of your car windows, buttholes. 6 Raw Batty 6 intercepts the cup, drives to the hole, slam dunk for the win. Some snotty high school girl was behind me in a car once, beeping and flashing her lights, apparently complaining that I was going too slow. As soon as the road widened to 2 lanes, she gunned it and went around me, flipping me off as she went past, because apparently I drove the speed limit just to vex her. About 30 seconds later I saw her car pulled over by a cop in an active school zone. She was out of the car being handcuffed. They only arrest if you've been doing an excessively high rate of speed, but in a school zone it doesn't take much. She saw me as I went by going 20 miles per hour. I blew her a kiss. I love that. And I love how blowing a kiss probably offended her more than the middle finger would have and yet maybe made her think a little too. 1 AM in the middle of town at a stoplight, a nice Mustang pulls up alongside me, I'm in a stock Corolla, and starts revving his engine, calling me a B while his girlfriend was laughing. I ignore him and turn up my music. He peels out, takes off and goes around the bend. That's when I see the cop pull out of a parking lot on side of the road. I slow down and wave to the guy as he is pulled over. He flips me off just as the cop is walking up to his window. Sounds like something straight out of a 90s movie. I'm driving down a main road in my town at about 2 AM. I take the route every day so I know there are cops ahead, so I'm driving about 5 below the limit. Some cockroach decides to blow by me, crossing into oncoming traffic and almost hits an oncoming car. He swerved back as quickly as possible, nearly clipping my front bumper. I look in my rear view and see lights go on. Idiot almost hit a cop. He never decides to slow down at all, speeds up and bam. Out of a parking lot a cop pulls out in front of him and he T-bones the cruiser. Karma at its finest. I hope nothing happened to the other officer that got T-boned. Whoa, good timing. Just got home 15 minutes ago from a 300-mile trip on my motorcycle. I love semis. They are great on the road and I always help them out. Flash my lights to let them in, make sure they can see me etc. So when I saw a car being a dong I pulled up next to them and made the I'm watching you gesture. The semi behind me honked in appreciation and not 5 minutes later the same car was refusing to let me pass. 2 trucks blocked her off and cleared a lane to let me pass. I can only assume the truck who had honked at me got on the radio and let everyone know to look out for his little buddy. That is so freaking awesome even if it's bulls. If I had $1 for every time some idiot passes me at 90 plus mph and ends up pulled over 2 miles down the highway I'd have $8. That means it happened 8 times. I was driving on the highway in the fast lane beside a police car doing the unofficial speed limit of 120 km per hour. So naturally I was matching him. The car on the other side of the cop car was doing the same, so traffic was pretty steady behind us as everyone usually does 130 km per hour on this particular stretch of highway. Suddenly a wild jackass appeared in a crappy Pontiac Sunfire and proceeds to ride my butt for about 3-5 kilometers, then decided to jump over into the high occupancy vehicle HOV lane and guns it. Gun HOV lane has specific spots where you can enter and exit. We had yet to reach one of those. Also the guy was solo in the car. I look to my right and I just see the cop smile at me, nod, and flip on his lights and take off after the jackass. Couldn't help but smile all the way to work. One day I was driving down the road late at night and a car was riding my butt the whole way with their high beams on. Finally the guy driving past me in a turn lane and sped off into the distance going at least 90. I could see him up ahead when we reached the end of the road, a dead end. I watched as his taillights kept going straight and off the hill on the other side. Zero fricks given. I kept on driving while he was climbing out of his wrecked car in a cornfield. Particular stretch of busy highway, at night. Driving the GF home and a Volvo SUV blows by us like we're standing still. I was already doing about 10 over kilometers per hour. NBD. As the Volvo disappears into the distance, I say to the GF, wow, never any cops around when you need them, I guess. Imagine my surprise when the generic American SUV in front of me lights up like a red and blue Christmas tree. Officer takes the Volvo down. It was glorious. It's always safe to assume that any GMC or Chevy SUV is an unmarked cop car. Some guy cut me off once in a roundabout in the most rude way possible, nearly causing me to crash into him. I slammed on my brakes and I was seething with anger. Fast forward 10 minutes later, some other guy, Dodge Master Flex, decides to cut off the first guy, let's call him P-Flaps, off, so they get into this bit of road rage war, trying to cut each other off and I got caught in the middle. I call the cops because I noticed one of the guys had his kid in the backseat and this was not about to end well. Turned out there was a cop in an unmarked car literally a few cars up ahead of me. He couldn't see what was going on when they radioed him, so he slowed down letting traffic pass him by as these buttholes are still going on with their stupid testosterone fueled war. The cop pulls over P-Flaps, and another cop pulled over the Dodge Master Flex up ahead. Ha 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 ha. How do y'all like Mahjong now? When I was younger, I saw a cop in an unmarked car run into a convenience store with his gun drawn. I was waiting in the car while my dad was inside the store, and I thought that the cop was a robber. I was scared and worried, but a few moments later my dad walked out with a big grin saying he just saw some guy get arrested. Guy thinks he can beat freeway traffic going 80 plus mph down the shoulder. Guy gets pulled over and must then endure the jeering of all the drivers he sped past as they slowly roll by. Oh, and this was the same day I saw the guy shooting up H while driving. Ah, Austin. It might have been insulin. Yeah, no. I was driving south on I-684 NY morning rush about 4 years ago. Anyone who knows this road knows that the average speed in the middle lane is 75. 80 if you are going under 80 stay out of the left lane because some butthole in a monster truck is going to ride your tail until you get out of the lane. This morning I was in the left doing around 70. Traffic was extremely heavy and all lanes were moving around the same speed. I was in the end of what I call a pod. Bunch of cars all going the same speed so no one can really pass. I looked in my rear view and see a 2-seat BMW coming up on me real fast. Within seconds he was 3 feet off my bumper leaning on his horn. I knew that slamming on my brake might give me satisfaction. I did not relish the idea of a rear ender, so I just took my foot off the gas and started to coast. This enraged the butthole even more and he pulled out from behind me cutting someone in the middle lane off and proceeded to cut me off and get in front. I knew he was going to slam his brakes on to teach me a lesson and had already prepared by starting to brake myself. He was half in my lane at about a 30-degree angle when he tramped on the brakes sending him and his car into a skid across all 3 lanes. Amazingly no one hit him but when he went off the right shoulder he rolled the beamer. I witnessed this in my rear view. I went to the next exit and did a U-turn and got to the accident scene. A NY state trooper was already there. The moron was sitting in the grass next to his wrecked car. I told the trooper the story as to what happened and he said they would call. I never heard anything from them. I bought my car off Craigslist. It had a random little red button installed next to the radio. Took me forever to figure out what it did. If I hold down the button, it turns on the brake lights. So convenient when somebody is riding my butt. I was driving home from work, basically downtown. I lived probably 10 miles away in the suburbs at the time. I'm at a red light about to get onto the highway and I look down to my iPod to change artists or something, and there is a cop car in the other lane about a car behind me. I look up and see him looking at me. Oh crap, I think he probably thinks I was looking at my phone. The light turns green. I turn onto the highway, and as I expect he follows me. I'm expecting to be pulled over here, but I'm not. Instead the cop car gets right behind me. I'm doing the speed limit to the decimal here. Hands are 10 and 2 and keeping in the lines. He just rides my butt. The whole goddamn way home, he rides my butt. We make eye contact through the mirror a few times and I know he's running my plates or something. Maybe looking for an excuse to pull me over. I'm not sure. Anyway, we go about 10 miles or so on the highway to my exit and I get off. So does he. Still riding my butt. I pull up to a light with a right turn only lane next to me, which he gets into. He pulls by my car and gives me a good look. I'm looking straight ahead, trying not to notice. This part happens fast. My light turns green. He is about 2 cars ahead of me in the right turn only lane with some cars behind him. He takes the right turn and immediately moves to take a left turn into the gas station across the street. I think so he can get back onto the road that I'm on and probably pull me over. I turn to my friend who's in the passenger seat and say, he's finally going to pull me over. Right as I'm moving through the intersection, he's making his left turn and wham, he's hit from the side. He was so busy keeping his eyes on me that he cut this woman off and she nailed the side of his car. Moving pretty fast too. I couldn't believe it, and my friend thought I was some sort of dark wizard. Well, I was putting some honey mustard on my chicken burger from BK while on a small road going about 15 miles per hour and hit a piece of metal on the road. Dropped my chicken burger after I hit it. Karma for not paying attention and driving dangerously. Ruined burger and a flat tire. Learned my lesson. At a friend's shop I was stopping by and a lady's minivan was in for service and she had literally no brakes, popped line and no pads all the way around. She refused the service even when offered a largely discounted price. It was then we noticed that she had her kids with her, all 5 of them. My friend kept her busy with her car on the rack for about half an hour while I called the police like he asked me to. In Illinois, shops cannot hold a vehicle hostage because it is not road safe. The cop pulls up outside and she got about 1-2 miles away when she was pulled over. On top of her ticket she had to pay $140 for the tow and my friend gave her no discount for the service. She turned around and tried to sue him but with the liability paperwork basically saying she knew what she was doing was dangerous and unlawful. It didn't get very far in court. Upvote for helping those kids get out of immediate danger. After work one day I was going down the road on my way home and there was a Dodge Charger riding my butt. My vehicle of choice that day was my Ram 1500. As I was going down the road he proceeded to tailgate me so badly that I could barely see the top of his windshield, so I gave him a nice friendly brake check. What's he do after that? Gets closer. So I then proceeded to take my foot off the gas, slowed down from the speed limit to roughly 10 miles an hour and then came to a complete stop when I got to where I needed to turn. Once I made my granny turn, the guy in the Charger floored it, burning out in the process, fingers out the window and all, and got pulled over not even 30 feet away. Oh, I am sorry about, well, you know what. 2 cars with dealer tags, one Passat and one A4, are obviously racing and cut me off. About a mile down the road all traffic is stopped and notice the 2 cars crashed at the bottom of a ditch. I speed. I was going a good clip in the left lane and saw a cop up ahead. The big bald jackass who didn't want to go past me when he has the chance got really offended. I slowed down. He started getting up on my tail, flashing his lights, and flipping me off. This is all within 35 seconds of me seeing the cop and slowing down. He cuts off someone in the right lane and speeds past me, flipping me off. Right when I see his brake lights go bright red. A second later, the cop's lights go on. But got what he was asking for. Not that great of a story. A good lesson to always pay attention when someone slows down to the speed limit for seemingly no reason. I'm driving down the freeway in SoCal and nearly get run off the road by an butthole who's texting while driving. Literally before the final syllable of mother sucker escapes my mouth, a highway patrol races by me and pulls him over. Never before or after have I seen karma strike so quickly. My girlfriend and I were driving through the Columbia River Gorge right after Christmas last year and it was just pea rain. Like biblical flood raining. Trucks would pass us splashing enough water on the windshield to destroy the already minuscule amount of visibility we had. It was white knuckle. Anyway, we're going slowish and this shat in a Mercedes passes us doing at least 80. Speed limit is 55-60 and splashes the frick out of us and keeps going. About 30 minutes later we see his car up on top of a guardrail, completely totaled. I was driving along a while back, going around the speed limit or a little over, 55-60 mph, when a truck came up behind me and then passed. I figured it was no big deal, it's a one lane each way, but it's also kind of rural so generally people go kind of quick and will pass if they need to. A few miles up the road though I came up to a stoplight and lo and behold the same truck was at the stoplight. I thought it was kind of funny that the driver had been in such a rush but not gotten any farther along than I had. What ticked me off though is that upon the light turning green, the driver just guns it, and the speed limit dropped significantly after the light, and started weaving in and out of traffic, generally just driving kind of a sholly and recklessly. Of course a cop ended up pulling out of a side street and immediately pulled him over. My uncle has a saying specifically for these people: see ya at the next red light. When I was 18, I was coming back from summer school in my mom's car. I took an extra class before university and some lady was coming out of a plaza, cutting me off completely and I had to swerve around her, missing her by probably 1 meter. Just imagine a dolled up Italian lady talking on a cell phone in a Mercedes, just not caring about anybody else driving but herself. I don't think she even noticed she cut me off, cause she didn't apologize or seem even that worried afterwards. Eventually she pulled in front of me, speeding like crazy, and we were going down the same street. All of a sudden I see her accelerate and slam on her brakes immediately after. I hear a loud thud and see her slam in the back of this guy's car. The guy's SUV had minor bumper damage while the lady's Mercedes was pretty fricked up. I have never felt such satisfaction in my life before. This is not funny, but rather sad. I was driving with my mom when I was about 14 and we were on the highway. There's this crazy guy on one of those little crotch rocket motorbikes who's being a complete dong and is obviously drunk and maybe a bit coked out. Well, he is going extremely fast and weaving in and out of traffic, being disrespectful, and just being a downright butthole. We came to a red light and he pulled up next to my mom's car. I rolled down my window and attempted to yell over his revving engine that maybe he should slow down. He looks at me and says, "Frick off, kid." Well, fast forward a mile or so and I am looking out the window thinking about this douche and why people like him exist. I then see a crowd of people at the side of the road and tell my mom to stop and pull over. We got out of the car and lo and behold is the guy, lying in a pool of his own blood. At first I was shocked just from seeing the lifeless body, but then I started to think that I may have brought this upon him with my mind and I was scared. I told my mom this and she just said I was crazy and there was nothing to worry about. All in all it was a weird day and a strange story. Sounds like you gave that guy one last chance to save his own life and he ignored it. My partner and I were pulling up to a four-way intersection in our large work truck. Opposite us was a city bus, and traffic in the cross lanes. Light turned green and we proceeded through the intersection. Bus slowly turns to the right, our left, and is halfway through the turn when from our right, a cross traffic jerk decides to blow the light. He passes in front of our bumper by inches, strikes the front fender of the bus, and to top it off, city cop car was waiting at the light heading in the opposite direction. Newspaper said guy was arrested for failure to obey sign or signal, failure to have a valid license, failure to have insurance, public endangerment, reckless driving, and there was a warrant out for not showing up to court. It was glorious. I was sitting at a stoplight and this guy pulled up right on my butt, then started honking at me. The light was red so I was fuming. Typical road raging me, being honest here. Rolled down my window and flipped him off. I realized he was just probably having a bad day but all I could think was, what an butthole. Then as the light turned green I began accelerating especially slow as to pee him the frick off. He then pulled around me and floored it. I was soon after greeted with the beautiful image of his car pulled over on the side of the road with a cloud of white smoke rising from his car and a ripped to shred tire. It was a wonderful day. I was driving to a buddy's house to play some basketball. I got stopped at a light and the moment it turns green the guy behind me honks his horn and starts waving his arms. I roll my eyes and think say hello to the speed limit. I set my cruise at 35 miles per hour. He's stuck behind me for around a mile due to the windy road. He finally passes me, giving me a much expected finger, to which I'll laugh and continue on my jolly way. I go around the next corner to see him being pulled over. When I was young, I was a total douche. I was 19 years old and riding with friends in Chicago, my first time in the city. I was drunk and my sober friend was driving. I was with 3 chicks in the back of a car and I was getting laughs by yelling things at people as we drove by. I saw this huge Amazonian black chick, and this being 2003, that one movie Deuce Bigelow was fresh in my mind. I yelled at Sahuji out the window. We literally stopped at a red light less than a second after I said B. She was like, "N what you say?" and I was trying to roll up the window because power windows were not standard on the 2003 Malibu. I stared straight ahead, terrified for my life, as this woman pounded on the window screaming she would beat my butt. I was praying the light would turn green, especially when she took off her high heel and started trying to bash the window in with it. The light turned green and we sped off. Needless to say, I was humiliated in front of the chicks and the driver lectured me on yelling crap out the window. I deserved it. Finally, a story from the other side. I was on my way to college on the highway one morning in my Camaro. It's an automatic V6, so by no means is it a race car, and I don't pretend it is. This kid came up behind me in a Dodge Dakota Sport and kept going back and forth beside me trying to get me to race. I shook my head no to him, and after finally giving up on the challenge, he takes off in front of me. After he's about 3 car lengths ahead of me, a deer jumps out in front of his truck and smashes all the plastic bits all over the highway. I just waved to him and kept going to class. Oh dear. I work up the street from a courthouse. Guy gets in his car, pee after losing his case, does like 7,000 kilometers up the street, smashes his car into another car, slides off of that and totals a brand new $50 K truck which flies backwards into a Kia behind it. Cops pull up the street in 4 seconds and arrest him for driving with an expired license. 7,000 kilometers, that is one long street. I was driving the country route back home after work one night during December. It had been snowing all day. There was probably 5 or 6 inches of fresh snow covering everything, including the roads. I was traveling approximately 40 miles per hour on this tiny snow-covered road. Cue this giant, lifted truck with smokestacks behind me. He's riding my freaking butt, like freaking hard. I was driving my 2-door little 1992 Honda Accord, and there were moments where I literally couldn't see his headlights in my side mirrors. The driver was honking and throwing a freaking tantrum, not passing me though. Finally, I got annoyed by my lack of vision due to his lights and the incessant honking, so I just slowed the frick down. Finally, this butthole revs his butt frick truck up and tries to speed by me. He does, right into a fricking ditch. I stopped, got out and said, "Yeah, these roads are a little slippery." He replied with, "Frick you," and I got in my car and went home. Was a fun drive. Sure, I'll bite. I was driving along one day on a very busy road in my hometown. I get to this huge intersection and see a fire truck coming from my right with its lights and siren going. So, I did what everyone is supposed to do and stopped. Well, nobody else did. Literally, I'm sitting still in the center lane. Everyone else is still going. Truck trying to cross the intersection, horn blaring, sirens screaming, and nobody seems to give a frick. Eventually, the person that stopped behind me lays on her horn, guns it around me, flips me the bird and just stares right at me. Well, she didn't see that the fire truck had made its way into the intersection, and she slammed right into it. I put my car in park to go up and see if she was alright. Not an EMT or a doctor, but I do know some first aid. She hurt her head pretty bad and was bleeding a lot. Thing is, when the firefighters pulled her out, she was cursing them out for running a red light. I swear, some people. When the firefighters pulled her out, she was cursing them out for running a red light. Some people just need to fricking die. About 4 years ago, I was driving home from work when I came across 2 Deutsche oil riggers, one in a regular half-ton, the other a half-ton and trailer that had some weird tank on it, tailgating a poor old man. I drove beside them for a while as they proceeded to drive 2 feet off the back bumper of this old man. So I flipped them the bird, told them to pick on someone else. Well, All of a sudden the guy in the half-ton roars up past me and blasts by screaming and cursing me. He proceeds to get a half-mile in front of me, when up come the truck and trailer behind me. I drive a half-ton as well, so when I look out my rearview mirror and can't see the grill of the truck behind me, I knew he was close. Well, I'm watching the guy in front and the guy behind me. We are coming up to an intersection with a red light. We are all in the right-hand lane. The guy in front stops at the red. I've drove this route 1,000 times, so by watching the other lights I know that it is about to turn green. I continue full speed with the jack butt still attached to the back bumper. Light turns green and I quickly change lanes from right to left. The guy behind me had no chance. 55 miles per hour right into the back of his buddy's truck. Trailer flipped. Tank shot off, spraying gunk everywhere. Highway closed down for 2 hours. I've never felt so good. I had a guy following really close on the highway. He would get in front of me and slow down, get behind me and tailgate, then get in front of me again. It was really late at night and there were no other cars around, and I don't know why he was driving like that. After a few miles, just as he got behind me, a piece of gravel flew out of my tire and took out one of his headlights. Turns out my 2-year-old nephew stuck a few pieces of gravel in there before someone caught him and stopped him, and one of them dislodged at the perfect moment. I was traveling on I-10 in my Silverado cruising at 75-80 mph like normal light traffic, but everyone is keeping up with me. I always tend to lead these speed groups like they are my children for some reason. So here I am leading this train of carnage down the highway when I see a black Civic picking on my homies, swerving in and out being a dong. He eventually makes it to my rear bumper and I begin to investigate and figure out what is about to go down. I immediately notice that it's a younger guy in his girlfriend's car. I assume this because there is a young girl in the passenger seat, obviously uncomfortable, and there is a pink bow hanging from the rear view. I give this guy room to get around, but I apparently offended him by getting out of his way. He switches in behind me and gets even closer. I begin to sporadically let off the gas and accelerate. This sends him into rage mode, and I see that I have him right where I want him. He whips out into the other lane to attempt to jet in front of me and pull the same move. That is when I kick my V8 into gear and stay a tad bit in front of him. His girlfriend at this point is telling him to stop, and I start feeling kind of sorry for him, because I may be ruining their date night or something. I hit the brakes and let him speed off, thinking that was the end. The dude literally gets a car length in front of my truck and I heard a pop and saw smoke. A second later, sparks are flying everywhere and his tires are flying all over the road. His front tires and his rear passenger tires all simultaneously erupted at the perfect timing. I quickly tap my brakes and get in the middle of the two lanes and throw my hazards on, giving this guy some room to decelerate and get onto the shoulder. I was also expecting him to lose control at any moment, so I didn't want him to hit any of my children cars that are still sticking with us. A few seconds go by and the guy does nothing. He stays at 60 miles per hour, just ripping the remaining bits of rubber off and grinding down his rims. I guess his pride just would not let him admit defeat, and as soon as the next off-ramp arrived he ripped over, cutting me off, and accelerated down the ramp. He seemed to hit around 80 mph plus getting off the freeway. I will never know what happened to him, nor will I understand what was going on in his mind. My first thought was that he kidnapped the girl, but when they first rolled up she was joking around and laughing about him driving crazy. If you are reading this, dude, I just want to know why. Oh, and yes, I tried to pop cars' tires with my mine for the remainder of the trip, and I still try it occasionally.